everyone, this is Ms. Swanson, and this will be the first of hopefully a few videos on MLA and citing sources. So I'd like to get started with the basics. Right now I'm in the course content button. As you can see, this hopefully will look a little bit like your screens. And I'm going to go to our current assignment, which is the critique essay. So I'll click on that. And what I'd like to do is just to give you a brief overview of MLA format for your essay, which many of you have already been using for the summary, so that's good. But just to give you a brief overview of that, and then I'd also like to talk a little bit about using attributive tags within the critique. So the critique assignment is here, and when you click on that, you'll see all of the requirements for the critique essay, and also 2 student examples of critiques that I'd love for you to look at. Both of these examples were used in past classes of mine. They earned A's. That does not mean that they were perfect, and I didn't fix any issues that they had, regarding punctuation or, overusing the word you or anything like that. So, this isn't something to use as a model, as in you should do it exactly this way, but these are examples of A's. So, getting back to this, on the critique assignment, you'll notice obviously all the requirements here, length requirement, the format, which we'll go over in a moment, and then the style requirements. But also, these little things attached up here are important. So the outline you should use to organize your critique is here. You should click on that, and you can basically fill in the blanks. Also, there's a little thing here called critique guidelines that should help you to just kind of figure out what exactly you should be doing within each of the 5 portions of the critique. And then finally, the critique peer review / rubric is here. This is what you should use during the peer review so that you can help one another to make things better for the final draft. And this is also what you should use for your final draft before you turn it in, to make sure that you have everything that you need as far as the requirements go. This is what I will use to grade all of your essays. I will look for all of the items within this document. So getting back to the essay itself, what I have here is the critique student example that is under the critique tab there. So I want to just go over what MLA format should look like. You'll have your name here. Obviously it won't say student name, but I blocked that out for the previous student. So it will have your first and last name here. What you'll notice about the page here is that it's in Times New Roman. Default is usually this Calibri here, so you'll need to go up and actually change that from the very beginning, or if you haven't, just go back and highlight everything and change it to Times New Roman. Your font size can be anything from 10 to 11 to 12, okay, but no bigger and no smaller, and the same font size throughout the entire paper. The other thing you'll want to do is go to paragraph, and when you drop that down, you'll want to make sure that your line spacing is at double, okay? The other thing you want to make sure is that you click this little box. Don't add space between paragraphs of the same style, and then hit OK. If you don't do that, it'll just, give you a big space in between each of your paragraphs. Okay, so the other things you want to make sure that you do are to look at page layout here and margins. The default of the margins on the newest Word versions are 1 inch all around, which is what we want. But just make sure that yours are at normal 1 inch all around before you proceed. And then finally, something that you'll want to do is to make sure that you have page numbers. So you'll want to go over here to the Insert button. Many people try to add a page number as a header. Don't do that, because it will have the same page for every page. So you want to go to Insert, and then after that you want to go over to Page Number. When you click on that, you want top of page, and you can hover over it or click it. And then you want plain number 3, because that's the one that's in the top right corner. When you click that, you'll notice that there is a cursor before the page. And then you can actually type in your last name and a space, and then click out of it. And then it will appear on every page. Okay, so those are the basics. That's what the paper should look like. As far as what's included in your heading, just make sure that you type this into your paper. It's not a header, because again, if it's a header, it will appear on every page, and that's not what we want. You'll have your name and then the professor's name. That could be Professor Swanson or Ms. Swanson. The next is the title of the class, English 102 in our case, and then the date. You'll notice that the date is in English format, so it's day, month, year. Then you'll notice that there's only one space between the last part of the header and the title. The title here is centered and also capitalized. Every letter of each important word is capitalized. You should do that even if you have a title in your title, as this one does, and they don't capitalize their title. MLA always capitalizes titles. Okay, so you'll notice that this one has the title of the article in the title. That's fine. Notice that that article is in quotation marks. That's also good because we always put other people's articles in quotation marks. However, we don't put our own title in quotations. So we have to add critique of before their title because that's not our title. We didn't write this article. Okay? So then you'll notice that the first paragraph here is indented one tab. All of your paragraphs in MLA format should be indented one tab. So no block format. Okay, and then getting back to talking about the critique itself and using attributive tags. Many of you may not have studied attributive tags in the past, so what you need to know about attributive tags is that they simply attribute these ideas back to their owner or owners. So in this case, Al Baker is the author of this article. Since this is a critique, we're going to begin just like you did with the summary, introducing the author or authors by first and last name, and the title of the article. So that's here. And then the other thing that you'll want to do is to include the main purpose or thesis of the article somewhere in your first couple sentences. So that's our introduction of the attributive tag here. Al Baker's the first and last name of the author, the title of the article is here, and then the main purpose is next. Okay. Now, as you move along, if you use any more information from the article, you'll want to include an attributive tag to show that that information came from the article, especially because many of you are using web articles and they don't have pages. You do not have to print those pages and number them yourself if you don't want to. This person did. So they have citations, okay? You may not have decided to do that. And in that case, that's when attributive tags become so important because you need to make sure that you are showing that these ideas are not your own, they're someone else's. So that's when you want to use things like Baker points out, Baker writes, okay? Anytime that you use information from the article, especially if you're not using citations to show that this came from the article itself, you need to use an attributive tag. Notice that we're just using the last name now. After you introduce the author or authors the first time with first and last name, you only use the last name afterward. You don't have to use Mr., Ms., or Dr., and in fact you shouldn't in MLA format, just the last name. But remember that anytime you're using an example from the article, you want to attribute that example, whether it's paraphrased or quoted, back to the author or authors. So Baker writes again. Baker says, often according to Baker. You know, that's the kind of thing that you want to use. So make sure that you are giving credit to the author or authors for their ideas. Whether you put them in your words or not, they're still someone else's ideas, so they need to have credit for that. Also, if you aren't citing page numbers, just doing a last name in the parentheses is not always sufficient because your ideas are going to sometimes be before and after. So your reader may not know if everything before that citation is from the author or if everything is yours and something's from the author. It's a little confusing. So it just makes things more clear if every time you use something from the author, you show in your sentence that it's from the author by using an attributive tag like according to so-and-so, or so-and-so says. The same goes for quotes. Don't begin a sentence with a quote because your reader may not know who's speaking. So use that attributive tag before the quotation marks to show, oh, Smith said this, or Baker said this. This is from the author. Or if your author introduces someone else and someone else is speaking, you introduce that person who is speaking in your sentence. Okay, so that is our first MLA citation / attributive tag video. If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope to post a few more of these about the critique itself in the coming weeks before it's due, and then certainly about the argument and more MLA citing once we start talking a little bit more about that. Okay, thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye.